So one of the things that I did not show you how to do in the last video was how to program the reset button. I was hoping that most of you would have been able to figure that out, but I wanted to give you this so that you can get it in here. If you go to blocks and click on button reset, click on this when button reset, we want to set the global score to 0 and then duplicate this label information and reset that score. That's all that you had to do. It was just like in the last app that we did. So let's look at some of the extensions that are on this app. One is to increase the speed of the sprite as the game goes on. So if you look back at Designer and you look at the clock, when the clock is firing is when the sprite moves. So if you change this number to something smaller, it will make the clock timer go off quicker. So to do that, you will say when, so again, it's when, like as the time goes on. So you could set a second clock to make the other one go off, or you could say each time they touch the hamster. Probably the easiest way to do it would be this. When they touch the hamster, to speed the game up a little bit. So if you go to when image sprite hamster is touched, or whatever yours is called, so when you touch it, you want to set clock timer interval to whatever it is minus a little bit. So grab this minus block and say clock timer interval and minus, maybe it's only at 500, so I wouldn't want to do too much, maybe 25. Now when you run this, your clock interval will go down a little bit each time. When you reset the game, you should then reset this interval back to where it was. To do that, duplicate this and get rid of all of that and set it back to 500. So that's one way that you could solve that problem. You could also have another clock go off. So the other way to do this would be, we'll leave that there for right now. So another way to do it would be to go in and add a second clock. And this clock we would call move faster, because I want to make the first clock move faster. So I don't want to do that every second. Maybe, actually you could probably do a little bit every second, or you could do it every 5 seconds. That would be 5,000. That's up to you. So what I would do in this case is say move clock faster. Whenever that clock goes off, set clock 1's timer interval to, I'm going to do every second, I'm going to move it by 5. That would make this clock move faster. So that would make the sprite go faster. So that's 2 ways to solve that problem. Remember, that was a pretty fast explanation. If you need to rewind this a little bit and watch it again, pause it when you need to and go back. Counting the number of misses is actually fairly easy. So canvas, when the canvas is touched, you can either take one away from the score or keep track of the misses. If you want to keep track of the misses, go back to the designer and we will add another label and put it right here. I will rename this label misses and set the text to misses equals 0. And in blocks, what I'm going to say is whenever they touch the canvas, that means that they haven't touched any sprite. So I'm going to say if they've touched any sprite, then we're going to ignore that. Otherwise, we're going to add to the misses. So I need a new variable. I'm going to call it misses. And I'm going to set it to 0. And I'm going to add 1 to that. And I'm going to grab this block right here and say set global misses to misses plus 1. And then I'm going to duplicate this label score and change it to label misses. And it's going to be misses and global misses. Make sure that when you click the reset button that you reset misses to 0 and you reset the misses text back to saying misses and global misses for that variable there. Again, I know that was quick, but go in and pause and refresh this as needed. I would like you to look at C and D with a partner if you get that point today, and I will see you tomorrow.